Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're back on the record in the Burch matter. The appearances are the same as they've been throughout the day. We're in the middle of the defense case, and Mr. Burch is still on the stand in direct examination. Because we are beginning our afternoon session, I'm going to ask Madam Clerk to swear Mr. Burch in again. If you'd stand, Mr. Burch.
Please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Please state your full name.
George Burch.
Thank you.
George Stephen Burch Jr., sorry.
All right. Again, you may be seated and speak into the microphone, Mr. Burch, and then Attorney Stebbins, you can continue with your direct examination.
Thank you, Judge. George, I believe we left off basically upon your arrival to Green Bay.
Yes, sir.
Ed had showed you your room and you basically fell asleep for a couple hours.
Yes, sir.
Now, I forgot to ask you, did you bring your kids with you?
No, sir.
Did you talk to them about your plans to move to Wisconsin?
Yes, sir. I sat them down and pretty much explained to them the situation I was going through and everything. And they let me know that they were 100% behind me on whatever I needed to do.
So are they still in Virginia?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I think I asked you this earlier, but do you remain in contact with them?
As much as I can. Yes, sir.
You said phone calls or...
Phone calls, text. We even used to go as far as playing Xbox Live. That's one way I learned that at a young age to communicate with them, and sometimes you get a lot more out of them by playing video games with them because they'll talk to you openly. And since I couldn't physically be there to play with them anymore, I would play online with them. That way I could still talk to them.
When you came to Green Bay, did you have a job lined up?
No, sir. I was just going to be working with Ed to help him out.
What does that do again?
He's a mechanic.
So did you guys discuss that prior to your arrival?
He basically just said that I could, it's pretty much a way of earning my keep, is just help him around the shop. That way, he didn't have to hire anybody, and anything he needed done, I would do for him. Go get parts, help change brakes, rotate, whatever needed to be done.
So let's go back then. You got here, you passed out from the trip and woke up. Did you guys do anything that night?
We ended up going out to a restaurant, bar/restaurant, I guess. It was like their last night being open, actually, for wings. It was on Monday night. I know it was by the water. That's all I know.
Did you meet Linda at that point?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you guys have any sort of prearranged rental agreement prior to you getting here?
No, sir.
I assume that topic came up at some point?
Yes, sir.
And what kind of arrangements did you guys agree to?
It was pretty much once I started working and had money coming in where I could pay, that I would pay $100 a week.
So you said you had planned on just kind of helping out Ed on odd jobs, whatever he needed?
Right.
Did you do that when you got here?
Yes, sir. He had his business was mechanic, and he would also go. One big thing about his business was he would come to you if your car broke down somewhere and fix it on the side of the road or fix it at your house and everything. So I would go help him do little odd things he needed done.
Did you, in addition to helping him with his mechanical work, did you do other things around the house?
Cook, clean, help cook. Like him and Linda would go out sometimes, so I would cook and clean or help cook for his dad because his dad had to eat by like 5 o'clock. And I'm used to dealing with older people and helping them, so it didn't really bother me. Plus, doing landscaping or whatever, shoveling snow or whatever needed to be done.
So it's not like you did everything, but you just kind of helped out here and there.
Whatever he asked me to.
Okay. Did you eventually get a job, a different job, or your own job, I should say?
Yes, sir. When I first moved here, even though I was helping him, I still was searching for employment. That way I could, earn my own keep also. It's nice to have money in your pocket.
And where did you end up working?
Blackstone on the east side.
Had you, did you go to Blackstone, or how did you come across that opportunity?
Actually, I went on Craigslist for the classified hiring in Green Bay, and it said that they were hiring, and I had mentioned it to Ed. We had talked about it, and one night we were working late, and like I said before, his dad has to eat early, so they ate at like 5 o'clock, and we didn't get done until like 7:30, 8 o'clock. So he suggested we go grab a burger at Blackstone on the west side.
So Blackstone on the west side, you guys,
Yes, sir.
did you actually go there?
Yes, sir.
Did you get the burger?
Yes, sir. And while I was there, he said, "Well, why don't you just go ahead and fill application since you're already here?" And he knew the waitress and asked if they were still hiring, and she said, "Yeah, they were always hiring." And I ended up sat there and filled out the application while I was eating.
And how long had you been here at that point?
I got here. This was Wednesday night. I got here Monday.
Okay. You filled out the application. Did you have an interview at that time, or was it just?
Excuse me. No, it was. Like I said, by the time we got done eating and everything, it was close to 9 o'clock, so there was nobody really there for me to speak with. She just said that she would give it to the manager, or excuse me, the owner, because he comes in the morning,
So you guys ate your meal.
and went home.
When did you next hear anything about that job opportunity?
Roughly about 1 or 2 o'clock Thursday, the following day,
And what happened?
they wanted to set up a interview with me to come in and speak to him.
They again being who?
The owner, the west side is owned by John Hines. The east side was opened for the son Daniel Hines, for him to essentially move back and help with his dad to open another business so he could have a portion of the business himself.
So you ate dinner at, was it the west side location?
Yes, sir.
And then where did you actually end up working?
I interviewed at the east side and was hired at the east side.
So they, after you filled out your application, they called you in for an interview?
Right. I talked to him Thursday, like I said, around 1 or 2 o'clock, and wanted me to come in. It was right before, I want to say right before lunch, the following day on Friday.
And what position did you apply for?
I originally applied just for cook.
Is that what you got hired as?
No, I actually got hired as cook / night manager.
Why was that?
The son was working a lot of hours, and they needed someone that they could depend on, that knew the business and knew how to run the business while they weren't there.
So you said you were hired partially as a cook?
Yes, sir.
So something you're familiar with?
Oh, definitely.
And then did you say you were
A night manager pretty much oversaw coming and going, the wait staff, placing orders, anything to be ordered, any problems with the customers or anything like that.
What kind of hours were you promised when you were hired?
We had worked out where it would be salary, and I would work 50, but no more than 55 hours a week.
And presumably you told Ed and Linda about this arrangement?
Ed was actually there when I got hired. He actually sat right next to me when the interview went on.
Okay. So then you got hired. Were you working there full time then?
Yes, sir.
Once you got hired?
Yes, sir.
Were you working the hours that were promised to you?
Originally, yes.
What happened?
People wouldn't show up. People would call out. People would quit. It's a very busy business there. They do a really good business there. And it got to the point where I was averaging anywhere from 75 to 80 hours a week.
And again, during this time frame, you were living with Ed and Linda?
Yes, sir.
When you first got here, how were you getting to and from work?
I had a truck.
What kind of truck?
I want to say it was 97, 98 roughly. It was a gold Chevy 1500.
And whose vehicle was that?
Ed's.
But you had permission to use that?
Yes, sir.
At some point, did you start using a different vehicle?
The frame, we were actually doing the brakes on the truck because the brakes were going bad, and we noticed that the frame had a lot of rust damage on it, and it was cracking.
So did you start using a different vehicle?
It was a 99 Chevy Blazer.
And is that the vehicle that we actually saw photographs of over the
Yes,
course
sir.
of this trial? The vehicle that was subsequently destroyed by fire?
Yes, sir.
So you were using that to go back and forth to Blackstone?
Yes, sir.
When you got here, what was your, I guess, cell phone situation or mobile phone?
I had had the same cell phone number since June of 2001, after we moved to New York, we had got, it used to be Nextel, which merged with Sprint.
And so you had that plan still when you came here?
Right, and as of when I moved here, it consisted of my phone, my wife's phone, and our children's phone. Because Sprint has the family locator, so if something ever happened to our kids, we knew where they were by GPS.
What happened with that phone after you got here?
After I'd moved here, my wife wasn't satisfied with Sprint anymore. She wanted to end up getting a new phone, and she ended up transferring her number to another company, which left me with pretty much the contract that was left, and that was getting ready to run out.
That was what?
It was getting ready to expire, the contract that I had with Sprint, and Sprint honestly didn't work too well here.
So that contract ended up expiring?
Yes, sir.
And the phone no longer worked?
Yes, sir.
Presumably, if you're living with Ed and Linda, you hang out with them every once in a while?
Yes, sir.
What kind of things did you do together?
Mainly we went out to dinner. We went out to for drinks a couple times. Went out to dinner. They took me to their family up in Rylander, I think's the name of it, for Easter. 'Cause I remember they waited for me to get off work because I didn't get off at Blackstone until like 8 in the morning, Easter morning.
And were you communicating with them about your work schedule as you were living there?
I didn't see them too often. Problem was I would go to work at like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. I'd leave to go to work, and they were just going to bed, or Linda was going to bed because she had to be up early. And a lot of times I wouldn't get back until like 10 o'clock the next morning from work.
While you were working at Blackstone, did you meet a woman by the name of Jordan Schuyler?
After a couple weeks of being there, I did.
Did she work there?
Yes, I would say so. She would come in a lot of times, but on the busier days, her mom was like one of the head night waitress, I guess is the best way to put it. And she would help her out, run food, take orders, clean, anything needed to be done. Excuse me.
And you two became friends, you and Jordan?
Yes, sir.
And eventually you started dating each other?
Down the road, yes, sir.
After you had left Blackstone?
Yes, sir.
So, as I just indicated, you did end up leaving Blackstone.
Yes.
How did that go?
I had spoke to Ed and Linda. They had even expressed that they didn't think it was right. What it really broke it down was the amount of hours I was working compared to my pay. It just didn't add up. I was working in the kitchen now with the hours I was working, I was roughly making like $9, $10 an hour. I made more than that in high school doing the same job, and I had a lot more responsibilities. And all I was doing was working and sleeping. I'd come home, pass out, wake back up, take a shower, have like an hour, and have to go back to work.
Was there a period of time in between, or I guess, did you have a job lined up when you left Blackstone?
No. I called Ed, spoke with him about it, and let him know, said, situation we had talked about. And he said, just quit. Just, we'll work it out. Just, it's not worth it. The headaches and everything you're going through, running yourself ragged for someone else, and you're not even making any decent money doing it.
Was there a period of time before you were able to get another job?
Roughly just under 2 weeks.
What was that other job that you found?
NEW Landscaping.
I'll take that back. So NEW Landscaping, presumably you were doing landscaping work.
Yes, sir. Lawn maintenance, shrubs, pruning, you name it. Anything had to do with flowers, grass, mulching.
Was that a full-time job?
Yes, sir.
And what vehicle were you using to get to that job?
Blazer.
Did you always did you ever wear safety glasses when you were at work?
Sometimes, when there was more chances of getting hit in the eye with something. but not all the time. Excuse me.
Would you always wear long pants and long shirts?
No, sir.
What about gloves? Did you always wear gloves?
If we were working with something that was going to stab you or prick you or irritate your hands or something like that, yes, but not always.
Over the course of your work landscaping there, did you ever get injured?
Not severely or anything, but bumps, bruises, scrapes, scratches, small things.
Nothing that you would like ever file a workers' compensation?
Oh, no, sir.
You had mentioned that you and Ed and Linda would occasionally, I guess, go out to eat.
Yes, sir.
Where would you guys go?
I believe it's called Who Hot or something like that. It's like a bar. I forgot. They cook your food on the stone or something. A couple different places. We went to Pizza Ranch. A couple like mom and pop places. I remember we went to one place they really liked to go was it's called Petticoat Junction. We used to go on Friday nights.
That was like almost. You said you used to go on Friday nights.
They used to always have a fish fry on Fridays, and they had like deep fried lobster and shrimp and things like that.
Did you ever go to Richard Cranium's?
Yes, sir.
Where was Richard Cranium's in relation to Ed and Linda's house?
Roughly 3 blocks, 2.5, 3 blocks from their house.
So that was you could walk there?
In about 4 minutes.
And as you, I guess, got to Green Bay, were working at Blackstone and stuff, would you go to Richard Cranium's by yourself sometimes?
Yes, sir. Occasionally.
Did you meet people at Richard Cranium's?
Yes, sir.
You remember any of their names?
Jeff Hennon and Matt Weisenberg.
Did you like Richard Cranium's?
The first time I went in there, I really didn't know anybody. It was kind of, where I'm from, you kind of shady. Some places you're kind of leery of where you want to go into because you don't know what you're walking into. But I went in there and everyone was really nice to me. And the second time I actually went back, they remembered my name and they remembered what I drank. So I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. I've only been in here once and they remember me.
And they remembered your name being?
Big Country.
And what's your drink that they remembered?
Jack and Coke.
Eventually, you moved out of Ed and Linda's house, right?
Yes, sir.
And where did you move to?
I stayed at Jeff's house for a little while.
Jeff being the guy that you just mentioned you met at Richard Cranium's?
Yes, sir.
How did that arrangement come to be?
I made him aware of my situation. He said that if need be, was welcome to stay on his couch for a while. He had a basement, but the basement was turned into literally like a living room, a bedroom. It was almost like a separate apartment, except there was like a locked door in between or anything like that.
When you moved in with Jeff, were you still working at NEW?
No, sir.
Had you, I guess, lost that job?
Yes, sir.
Was that because you lost your transportation to that job?
Yes, sir, because it was in, I want to say Little Schwamico. I want to say it's off 41.
When you lived with Jeff, you said you weren't at NEW. Did you find a different job?
Yes, sir.
What job was that?
Bay Area Finishers.
What kind of work is that?
Drywall, metal studs. It was tied into the, I've been a current member for a while now of the Carpenters Union, and was tied in through there.
Was that a full-time job?
Yes, sir.
And did Jeff work there too?
Yes, sir. He had mentioned it to me before they might be looking for someone, and I spoke to him about it, and he talked to his boss, and his boss told him to go ahead and bring me in once he heard that I had years of experience.
Was that also a full-time job?
Yes, sir.
Did you guys go to work together?
For the first job we did, first job was they did a sound edition for the band and music at UWGB.
So not all work assignments, though? You didn't go together every time?
No.
Then eventually, did you move out of Jeff's residence?
Yes, sir.
And where did you move to?
Matt Wassenberg's?
Again, is he the individual, one of the individuals you had gotten to know through Richard Craniums?
Yes, sir.
How did that arrangement come to be?
Jeff had a daughter that was 14, and her mom were not having the best of times, I guess, and she had asked if she could move with her father. And Jeff had came to me and said, you know, I know you need somewhere to stay, and I know you had talked to Matt about it. Is that what you plan on doing? And he explained to me their situation, that she would be staying downstairs, and because it was only a one-bedroom upstairs, and then they had like the other set up downstairs. It's a small house, and I told him I completely understood, and that's when I called Matt and talked to Matt about moving in there.
Matt was okay with it?
Yes, sir.
You kind of basically said you lived in the basement of Jeff's. What was your arrangement at Matt's?
I was staying on his couch. He had said eventually that he was going to be more likely moving out and moving in with his girlfriend, and asked me if I was interested, because it was a small little place, but it was decent for one, maybe two people. You know, it was a couple, and he asked me eventually if I liked staying there, that I wanted to maybe take over the lease, because he had expressed moving in with his girlfriend at the time.
But that never happened, though.
No, sir.
And do you agree that over the course of this trial we heard from Matt Wasenberg?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember him talking about some shoes that were found behind the door?
Yes, sir.
I believe there were some blue and white Shocks, and then
Yes,
a
sir.
couple of pairs of Jordans,
Yes, sir.
and then a few other items of footwear.
Yes, sir.
Do you agree with his description of the ownership of those shoes?
The blue and white socks were his, the gray and black Jordans were mine, and the black with the tannish gold bottom ones were mine.
And you were living at Matt's when you, or I guess, essentially you were on your way to work from Matt's when you were arrested?
Yes, sir.
And we've heard officers talk about that arrest?
Yes, sir.
And obviously, as you are well aware at this point, that arrest led to you being charged with the murder of Nicole Vanderheiden.
Yes, sir.
So, you're aware that all of the circumstances surrounding her death occurred between May 20th and May 21st of 2016.
Yes, sir.
So, let's go back to that time frame. So, May 20th of 2016, who were you living with at that point?
Ed and Linda Jackson,
Where were you working at that point?
NEW Landscaping,
And again, what vehicle were you using at that point?
Chevy Blazer.
I guess let's start with the morning of May 20th. That was a Friday. Do you remember that morning?
Yes, sir.
I guess, what do you remember about that morning?
I get up roughly at 5:15 in the morning, go downstairs, take a shower, get ready for work, make coffee, pretty much drink my coffee and take off for work, get my water. You know, I also always take waters and put them in the freezer, because doing landscaping, you're going to drink a lot of water.
So you did work that Friday?
Yes, sir.
How'd you get to work?
I drove the Blazer to, like I said, I believe it was Little Swamico, on the interstate.
That was that for that sound project? Or was it-
No, this was for this. I was still looking for landscaping at the time.
Okay. Do you remember what time you got back from work on that day?
It was roughly about 5:30, somewhere in there. I remember because when I got back, Ed and Linda were telling me to hurry and jump in the shower. They would wait for me, because that's when we would go to the Petticoat Junction restaurant.
The Friday night fish fry?
Yes, sir.
Did you have other plans for that weekend?
We were supposed to be going fishing the following day.
Or where were you supposed to be going fishing?
Racine,
And who were you supposed to be going fishing with?
that gentleman I spoke about earlier, Mike, from the A1 Fishing Tours.
So was this essentially the fishing trip that you guys discussed when you first got here?
Yes, sir.
Did you go out to eat with Ed and Linda that night?
Yes, sir.
And where did you say you went?
Petticoat Junction.
How was that?
Pretty good.
Who was there?
Ed, Linda, Ed's father, a couple of Ed's friends, and like one of his fishing buddies, and some other guy that they knew, and one had a wife and the other guy's girlfriend.
What'd you guys do after dinner?
We ended up going to the cell phone company at the mall,
Do you remember what cell phone company?
Cellcom,
And when you say the mall,
the one in Green Bay. I don't know the name of it.
and you said we went to the mall. Who went to the mall?
Ed, Linda, and myself.
How'd you guys get there?
We all rode in Linda's Jeep.
And what was the purpose of you guys going to the mall after dinner?
I expressed to him earlier about my cell phone that it was going to be getting turned off, and I need to find something. And Linda was talking to me about it at dinner, and I told her I was probably going to get a prepaid phone. And she said that I didn't have to go that route, that she could just add me to her line, because she already had one with Ed and herself, and she could add my phone just to her line.
And so that's what she did?
Yes, sir.
And that was on May 21st?
May 20th.
I apologize.
This is May 20th at roughly about 8:30 at night.
After the mall, what did you guys do?
We ended up going to I want to say the name's Pete, but I don't know if that's right. The guy that went out to dinner with us, Ed's friend, fishing buddy, we ended up going by his house because Ed and him were going locally fishing first thing in the morning, Saturday morning, before we went to Racine.
Okay, so you went to, you think his name is Pete's house?
I believe, I'm not sure though.
And that's a separate guy from the fisherman from Racine.
Right, that was Mike.
And I forgot to ask, after the mall or at the mall, did you have a cell phone activated?
Yes, I ended up getting a black Samsung Galaxy S5. It was one of those deals where if you get a phone, get a line, they give you the phone for free.
And I guess, were you able to, did you have to re-enter all your contacts and things of that nature?
No, I actually had, my Sprint phone was a Samsung Galaxy 5 S5, the gold edition, and I just got the same phone in the black edition. So there was a way they could link them and just transfer everything right over because it's the exact same phone. They're exactly compatible, set up and everything.
So as soon as that phone was activated, it automatically had,
Synced everything right to it.
so you had Matt Wasenberg's number?
All my contacts, all my emails, everything was tied right into the new phone.
Jeff was in there,
Yes, sir.
Jordan was in there.
Yes, sir.
At that point in time, what was your relationship like with Jordan?
We had been hanging out, going and doing things. We really hadn't started to be romantically involved yet. It was somewhat getting there, but it wasn't definitely like, we're going to be together. I wasn't with her every day. We hung out a lot, but it wasn't every single day.
Eventually, you guys grew even closer?
Yes, that would be, it was more over Memorial Day weekend, beginning of June, right around that time, is when we started hanging out a lot more together.
So not too long after that point.
No, about a week, 10 days roughly.
After, where'd you guys go after Pete's or whoever Ed's buddies was?
We ended up going back home to Ed's house.
What'd you do when you got home?
I went in my room, changed my shirt, and then I ended up telling them that I was going to go out for a little while.
What time around do you think you went out? And I guess where did you go out to?
I would roughly a little bit after 11, around 11, a little bit, maybe 11:15, roughly around that time. I went to Richard Crane's right down the street.
How'd you get there?
I drove.
Where'd you park?
When you, Ed Linda's street's right here, you go up 5th Avenue towards Broadway, Richard Crane's is right on the corner of Broadway and 5th, and the parking lot is on the back side of the building, so you get to the parking lot right before you get to Broadway, so I just pulled in right there.
Did you go inside right away?
Yes, sir.
What do you remember doing, I guess, when you first got to Richard Cranium's on that night?
Just walked in, said hi to like a lot of the usuals that knew me, asked me how I was doing, everything like that. When I went to the bar, I remember the bartender's name was Brandy at the time. I don't know if she still works there or not, but she had a drink waiting for me, and I plugged up my new phone because it wasn't charged all the way yet. Richard Cranium's has phone chargers, like every single stool has its own phone charger.
Was it crowded that night?
It's fairly packed.
And I guess what's the... I've never been to Richard Cranium's. What's the environment there? Is it what kind of bar is it?
I guess you could say it's somewhat sports orientated. There's a bunch of TVs, projection screen. It's like a happy-go-lucky place. I've never seen any violence there or anything like that. Yeah, I felt safe enough to leave my cell phone on the counter and go walk outside and have a cigarette and not have to worry about my phone being taken, if that helps.
Is that what was going on that night? Was it sports?
Pretty much. There were sports games on. Everybody talking about their week, what happened during the week, and
Just kind of
hanging out.
decompressing from the work week?
Yes, sir.
And you said the bartender, I think you said her name was Brandy, had your drink ready when you got there?
Yes, sir.
And what'd you say your drink was again?
Jack and Coke.
So you were drinking on this night?
Yes, sir.
Did you go alone to
Yes, sir.
At some point when you were there, did you end up meeting someone who you now know as Nicole Vanderheiden?
Yes, sir.
Tell us more about that.
I was in the bar area, went out before, had a cigarette, came back and standing there, and I don't know if I was watching TV or what it was, or talking amongst friends around me, but I noticed there was a fairly attractive blonde woman standing next to me.
What was she doing?
I believe she was getting a drink. I'm not sure. I just, there's a couple people over here, and she was over here, and I started talking to her, just making conversation.
Okay, so you noticed her and started talking to her?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember, do you remember if you approached her, if she approached you? I guess kind of describe for us as best as you can.
I just went to the side and saw that she was standing, and she didn't seem to be with anybody. She was by herself, and I just kind of struck up a conversation. She was right in the vicinity, right next to me.
Did you see her walk in with anybody?
No.
Did you see her walk in?
I don't remember her walking, her coming in or where she came in, because you can come in through the front or the back, and I just remember looking over, and she was standing close to my area at the bar.
And you don't remember seeing her before that?
No, sir.
You struck up a conversation?
Yes, sir.
What kind of stuff were you guys talking about?
First started, she said that it didn't sound like I was from here. I don't see myself as having an accent, but a lot of people do. And she just asked me where I was from, and started from there. Just talked about in general how I'd moved here and everything. Talked about my past, or just in general, told her things about myself, trying to get to know each other.
At any point when you were talking with her, did anybody arrive that seemed to be with her?
No, we sat there and talked for a while.
Did you guys talk about relationships?
We both expressed that we had been through marriages. I told her I had kids. She told me she had kids from marriages. And she was, I don't remember if she said separated or divorced. I told her that I was going through the current situation myself.
Did she give you any indication that she was actively in a relationship?
Not that I could tell, no, sir.
And while you were interacting with Nicole, did you continue to drink?
Yes, sir.
Did she continue to drink?
Yes, sir.
How would you describe her demeanor? I mean, was she like fallen down drunk or both?
No, we standing there talking, having a conversation. I could understand everything she was saying. She wasn't sloppy drunk or anything like that. I didn't notice her stumble or anything.
As best as you can remember, I mean, how were you acting towards her?
I was flirting.
And how was she acting towards you?
Somewhat the same, pretty much. Flirting back and forth with each other.
So I guess tell me more about that if you remember. I mean, what, if you remember, gave you the impression that you were flirting with her and she was flirting with you?
Well, I moved a little closer to her, just talking, laughing, joking, giggling, light touch here or there, just things that you can pretty much tell if someone's kind of into you, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Were you guys there for a while?
Till they kicked us out, pretty much.
So around bar close?
Yes, sir.
How does bar close work at Richard Cranium's?
They call last call, let you order some drinks, and pretty much tell you to get the hell out when it's time to go.
So
In those words.
on this particular night, is that what happened? They called last call?
Yes, sir.
You had another drink?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember if Nicole had another drink?
I don't remember if she was finishing the one she had or if she got another one. I don't recall. She could have, but like I said, I don't remember.
What happened after that?
We proceeded to leave through the back.
So you guys left together?
Yes, sir. I invited her back to my place.
She gave you the impression that she agreed to that?
Yes, sir. She walked to my vehicle. I opened the passenger's door. She got in the passenger's door. I shut the door, went around to the driver's side, and got in my Blazer.
Then what happened?
We went back to my house right down the street.
Did you guys get out of the car?
Yes, sir.
What'd you do?
We went in the house. We weren't planning. When we walked in, Ed's father was sitting there in the road, which kind of, I guess, slowed things down a little bit, I guess, on the way they were progressing to.
So what happened? You walked in and Ed's dad was awake?
Right, sitting right there in like the living room, dining room area in his robe.
So what'd you guys decide to do?
Excuse me. She needed to use the bathroom. She asked me if she could use the bathroom. I told her to go right ahead, and I showed her where the bathroom was. And then when she came out, we proceeded to go back outside, and then she said we could leave, go back towards her area.
So did you guys get back in the Blazer?
Yes.
Were you still driving at this point?
Yes, sir.
And where was she?
She was in the passenger seat.
Front passenger seat?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And your recollection is at that point, you said she had invited you back to her place?
Yes, sir.
Did you know where her place was?
No idea.
When you guys got back in the car, did she, I guess, give you an address to type into a GPS?
No, she just gave me directions. She told me to head back towards Broadway.
Is that what you did?
Yes, sir.
What'd you do when you got to Broadway?
Made a right.
And is that, why would you go right?
That's where she told me which way to go.
So she essentially was giving you directions as you were driving.
Yes, sir.
Turn left up here,
Right.
turn right up here,
Mm-hmm.
go straight.
Yes, sir.
And you were under the impression that you were going back to her place?
Yes, sir.
At this point, I guess, did she give you any indication of, well, did she tell you where her place was?
No. No, sir.
She give you a general neighborhood where it was?
No, sir. I wouldn't have known if she had told me where it was. I hadn't been here that long. I didn't know anywhere it was, any place it was around here.
Did you have any idea if it was like going to be an apartment or a house?
No clue.
Did you have any idea if she lived alone or with somebody?
No, sir.
You just knew that she did have kids.
I knew that her kids were gone with their father for the weekend
You guys talked about that?
when we were at the bar.
So at some point, you find yourself in a neighborhood.
Yes, sir.
Does she stop, I guess, giving you directions?
She told me to pull over on the right.
And now that we've been here and you've seen maps and things of that nature, do you believe that that was Berkeley Road?
Yes, sir.
So why did she have you pull over on the right? Do you know?
I don't know why she picked that exact spot to pull over. No, sir.
Did you have the impression you had arrived at her residence?
Yes, sir.
Did you go in her residence?
No, sir.
Why not?
She said there was a light on it. She thought the babysitter was still up.
So you never went inside the residence?
No, sir. I've never been in the residence.
She had you pull over on the side of the road?
The right side of the road, yes, sir.
Mr. Burch, just a reminder to speak nice and loud. Can the jury hear the witness all right? Okay. Go ahead, Attorney Stebbins.
You did pull over?
Yes, sir.
What happened after that?
We sat there and talked for a few minutes.
Okay. What happened after that?
Started fooling around, messing around a little bit. Started kissing.
And at this point, you were still in the driver's seat?
Yes, sir.
She was still in the front passenger seat?
Yes, sir.
And I don't want to get into too many details, but you said you were fooling around?
Yes, sir.
What does that mean to you?
Kissing. I was kissing her neck a little bit, touching each other.
Did you guys stay in the front seat?
No, sir.
Where'd you go?
The back seat, the Blazer.
How did you get into the back seat?
I got out of the driver's side and walked around to the back passenger.
Do you remember how she got in the back seat?
I don't remember if she got out and hopped in the back or if she just climbed over into the back seat.
But you said you went around to which door, I guess?
The back passenger?
And is that the door that would have been closest, one of the doors that was closest to the curb?
Yes, sir.
Did you get into the car at that point?
For a few minutes.
So when you got in the car then, where was she?
She would have been scooted over more towards the center / rear driver's side.
What happened once you got in the car?
The things we were doing before kind of continued and I guess you could say escalated.
When you went to the back seat, when you got out of the car and went around, were your clothes on?
I did not have my shirt on, but I had a tank top undershirt and my shorts on.
Did she have her clothes on when you got into the back seat?
Pretty much, yes, sir.
What does pretty much mean?
Her bra had been moved up. I don't remember if it was completely unfastened, but I know it had been moved up, and her shirt was disheveled a little bit, but they were still on her.
Eventually, do you remember if the bra and shirt came off?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember if you took them off?
I believe so, but I'm not definitely certain. I do know eventually that they were removed and out of the way.
And that happened when you were both in the back seat?
Yes, sir.
What about her pants? Do you remember, I know you said when she got into the back, her shirt was kind of disheveled. Were her pants on at that point?
At the start of it, yes.
So they didn't remain on?
Not after a while, no, sir.
Do you remember the process of her pants being taken off?
we had first touching, me touching her in certain areas, then me going inside her pants, getting to that same area, and then they were eventually removed.
And you said you were wearing shorts?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever take those shorts off?
Not completely off.
What does that mean?
They were later on lowered down around my ankles, but I never completely removed them from me.
I think you said that originally you actually got into the back seat.
Yes, sir.
Did that remain the case?
In the mix of everything going on, it's kind of hard to maneuver with me in the back of the Blazer and her in the truck together. There's not a lot of room for me. Naturally, my head pretty much almost hits the roof, and then trying to move around and finagling, doing things, just didn't work. So I ended up opening the back passenger door. It was very quiet. Like I didn't worry too much about someone really anything out there, because there wasn't, like I said, I'd never even seen a car come past or anything.
So you said you opened up the, which door?
The back passenger door. It was a 4-door Blazer.
And you got out of the vehicle?
Yes, sir.
Where was Nicole at that point?
3/4 of the way, I'd say, laying down across the back of the Blazer.
When you say 3/4 of the way laying down in the back seat of the Blazer, I guess, what do you mean by that?
I was engaging in something, and for me to get to what I had to get to in the area that I was at, she was pretty much laying down with her feet raised back, or her legs up.
So what you meant by the 3/4 or whatever, her entire body wasn't
Correct.
laid out on the back
Correct.
seat.
She was, her head would be more towards the center or the other side, and then her bottom and her legs were up, and I was...
So she was face up at that point?
Yes, sir.
Was she conscious?
Yes, sir.
Was she interacting with you?
Yes, sir.
Eventually, did you have intercourse?
I finished doing what I was doing, and then eventually, yes.
Do you remember whether or not you used a condom?
I do not recall 100%.
When you started to have intercourse, was she, I guess, positioned in the same way that you had already described to us?
For the most part, yes.
What does "for the most part" mean?
For me to be able to access what we were doing and function, for it to function correctly, I had to kind of scoot her to like the edge of the seat, because I was standing outside the Blazer, and I had to pull her where her bottom was almost not hanging off, but almost at the edge of the seat.
Attorney Stebbins, Mr. Burch, why don't you move that microphone to your left a little bit so the jury can hear a little bit better. I'm getting some signals that the jury's having a hard time hearing, so go ahead. They're not hearing you.
Is it me or is me together? So just going back to that last answer, you had said that when you started having intercourse, her body was slightly moved. Could you just re-give us your answer of what that means?
It was more towards the edge of the seat, the side of the seat. That way I could get to her. Because if she was farther up in the seat, I wouldn't have been able to reach her.
So when you say she was closer to the side of the seat, that's the side of the seat that's closest to the rear passenger door?
Correct. Towards the outside of where the door was open at, because I was standing up outside the door.
Where were your feet?
I don't remember if they were on the street or on the curb. I think they were on the curb, but I can't say for sure.
So at this point, I'm assuming her pants were off?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember if her underwear were off?
I believe they were also. I don't remember seeing them or remember them getting in the way.
What about your clothes? What are you wearing at this point?
I still have my tank top on, undershirt, and my pants are down around my ankle area.
Again, I don't want to belabor the point or get into too much detail, but would you describe this as, I guess, gentle intercourse?
No, sir.
Do you remember whether or not you ejaculated?
No, sir, I didn't.
When you were having intercourse with Nicole in the, I guess, positions that you've been describing, remind us again, was your head in the vehicle or outside the vehicle?
Little, depending on what was going on at the time, it was in somewhat for a little bit, and it was outside also, because that was the main reason for pulling her to the edge, because it was hard to get up in the vehicle at the same time. So that's why I pulled her to the edge, and I was holding on to her legs while I was outside the vehicle.
So, at that point, everything was going smoothly?
Yes, sir.
You were having intercourse with her?
Yes, sir.
What ended up happening?
The next thing that I remember, apart from us having intercourse, was literally waking up on the ground outside the truck, laying in the grass curb area.
I just want to make sure I get you correctly. So you remember having intercourse, and then you remember waking up on the ground.
Right.
You don't remember, I guess, any in-between time there?
No, sir.
When you say you were laying on the ground, do you remember where your legs were?
The predominantly part of my body was laying on the grass area, but my legs and feet area were like on the edge of the curb / in the street, I guess you would say, right there at that edge.
And where were you in relation to the vehicle?
If the vehicle's this way, back of the vehicle, the door's right here, I was laying like right here.
Okay, so I could kind of see your hands there. Were your legs under the vehicle?
No,
Where did you say they were?
like on the grass curb area. The grass curb area is here. This is the grass curb area, and then the vehicle's right here.
Okay.
Mr. Burch, I'm just trying to make a good record. When you demonstrated with your hands, are you saying your body was perpendicular to the car?
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
Right. I think that's what he was demonstrating before about where he was laying in reference to the car. Go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. And you said your upper body was in the grassy area?
Yes, sir.
So you said basically 1 minute you were having intercourse and the next you remember waking up in that position. Do you remember why you woke up?
I'm not certain, but I felt like I was rustled or something, I was hit or something made me aware of my surroundings all of a sudden, and I remember waking up and going, what in the hell?
So I guess just to describe that towards us, or for us. We weren't there. What were you perceiving as you were waking up?
At first I didn't know what was going on. I looked down and I'm laying on the ground and my pants are around my ankles, literally. And I was a little groggy, trying to, kind of put two together, what the hell was going on.
So you noticed that your pants were still down around your ankles?
Right, which was the first thing that made me wonder what in the world was going on.
You made a head movement, like you were kind of looking around?
Right, looking around to try to get my bearings. Didn't know where I was. Wasn't familiar at all with the surroundings around me.
Did you stand up right away?
No, not at first.
What happened at first?
I kind of grabbed my pants and went to kind of move, and that's when I pretty much noticed something was going on behind me.
What do you mean? What did you notice?
Eventually I realized it was a person standing behind me.
Walk us through that from you're coming to, you're scooting forward to pull up your pants, and you realize there was a person behind you. I guess, can you break that down further for us?
What do you mean?
When you were pulling up your pants, did you immediately look behind you, or I guess what caused you to look behind you?
I felt something behind me, something kind of, I wouldn't say hit me, but nudged me. It made me aware that I was not the only person there.
And you were still kind of gathering your senses at this point?
Yes, sir. It was kind of, I don't want to say groggy, but kind of hazy, I guess, a little bit, kind of still at the point where I don't know what's going on. Like I don't know the environment. I don't know how I get to this point. I don't just naturally wake up with my pants around my ankles normally.
Did you hear anything?
The first thing I heard was, don't even fucking think about it. It's the first things I ever heard, the first words I heard.
What'd you do when you heard those words?
I didn't know what to do. Kind of stilled for a second, and that's the main part when I definitely noticed there was, like I said, there was someone standing right behind me. Kind of tried to gather myself together as much as I possibly could.
Did you turn around at that point?
Somewhat. I looked like over my shoulder.
Did you see anything?
I saw what looked like a man standing with a firearm in his hand.
What exactly did you see, as far as you can remember?
It was fairly dark. I saw someone that looked like a hooded sweatshirt. Couldn't really see any faces, just glimpse. Standing behind me, it looked like it was like in this direction, and which appeared to be a firearm in his hand.
On the record history, like that. Mr. Burch, you were pointing down at a little bit of an angle and holding your hand. What are you referring to?
Like a firearm in his hand pointing in my direction, directly behind me.
I think the record has been made. Go ahead.
So you're coming to, you turned around, you heard what you heard, and that's what you saw?
Yes, sir.
What kind of firearm?
It was a handgun. What kind, I couldn't tell you. It was a darker handgun. It wasn't like chrome or anything like that. It wasn't shiny.
And you were just describing for the record where that was pointing. Was it pointing at you?
In my direction, yes, sir.
So it's not like it was pressed up against your forehead.
No, it was behind me.
As you turn around and see this, I guess, could you tell if it was a man or a woman at that point?
From the voice, from the rough outline of the person behind me, from what I could tell, I perceived it to be a man.
And at that point, I believe you said you couldn't really make out any facial features or anything like that?
It was too dark in the area. Like I could just see, like somebody turns a certain way, how you can get just a glimpse of them, but you couldn't see like their whole face.
How far away was this person, approximately?
I'd say no more than 10 feet, 7 to 10 feet, maybe at the most.
And is this directly behind you?
If I'm this way, they were at an angle somewhat off behind me. I don't know what you would call that, but they weren't standing directly behind me, no. They were off to an angle a little bit.
Would 7 or 8 o'clock be all right, Mr. Burch?
Yes, sir.
And the record reflect that Mr. Burch turned in the direction of about 7 or 8 o'clock in terms of where the person was in reference to him. Go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. 7 or 8 o'clock, does that mean, I guess, where is that person standing, in the road or in the grass?
They're in the grass area behind me.
What happened next?
Pretty much, I finished roughly gathering myself. I pulled my pants up. Was kind of still trying to pretty much gather myself to figure out like what were my options here. What do I have to do? Then I was instructed to move to the back end of the vehicle.
What do you mean?
I was told to pretty much don't think about doing anything stupid and move myself to the back of where the Blazer was, to the rear of the Blazer.
By the time you were told to move towards the back of the Blazer, had you had a chance to take in your surroundings?
Pretty much so. The close immediate area.
What do you mean when you said you were considering or thinking about your options?
If there was any way I could remove myself from the situation, to be completely honest, if there's anything I could do to get out of harm's way.
What types of things did you consider?
Running, screaming, trying to attack the person that had the firearm.
Did you do any of those things?
I didn't think that I would be able, honestly, to be able to do any of these things without being harmed.
So when you were instructed to go to the rear of the vehicle, you did what you were told?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe that for us?
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
So you were, I think you said, laying kind of by the open passenger door or the mid of the vehicle
Right.
when you came to? And is that where you were when you were instructed to move towards the rear of the vehicle?
I had stood up, but I was pretty much in that same area. Yes, sir.
So you did start to walk towards the rear of the vehicle?
Yes, sir. I started look back at the individual, and he motioned for me to move towards the back of the vehicle. The whole time, he still had the firearm pointing in my direction.
Did he move at all?
He moved, as I moved this way, he also moved to keep the distance away, pretty much the same distance, but he moved at an angle as I moved away.
So again, you were using your hands there. My understanding is you were moving towards the rear of the vehicle. He was moving towards the rear of the vehicle with you, but the way your hands made it seem, he was slightly further.
At an angle ahead of me, right, and kept the same distance away from me as I was moving away.
So that individual is doing that, and you walk towards the rear of the vehicle?
Yes, sir.
What happened next?
I, looking in my surroundings, we're towards the edge of the vehicle, back towards the rear of by the bumper area or that vicinity of the car. That's when I kind of noticed my surroundings.
What do you mean?
I noticed someone or something laying in the back behind the truck or behind the Blazer.
What did you see? I mean, exactly that you remember.
Once my attention got to that area, I looked closer and I realized that it was Nicole laying there.
Was that the first time, I guess, you had seen her since you were having intercourse?
Yes, sir.
Did you know if she was alive or dead at that point?
I didn't know if she was alive. There was a lot of blood on her face, come out of her mouth, on her back, but I couldn't, she wasn't physically moving.
So you first encountered her as you were I guess when you were walking towards the rear of the vehicle, and when you got to the rear of the vehicle, that's when you encountered her?
Right, she was laying on the actual street of asphalt behind the vehicle.
So she wasn't on the grass?
No, sir.
Wasn't partially on the curb?
No, sir.
She was completely in the street at that point?
Yes, sir. She was close to the curb, but she wasn't actually on the curb. She was in the street.
Do you remember if she was face up or face down?
If I remember correctly, she was kind of like laying on her side with her head toward the vehicle and her feet away from the vehicle.
So her feet were, I guess, pointed down Berkeley Road in the direction that you had come from?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Burch, you seemed to indicate she was laying her face was on its left side.
She was laying, her left side was up.
Go ahead, Attorney Stebbins.
What did you do when you came across that?
At first, I didn't know what to do, honestly. It kind of put some things in perspective, I guess, a little bit of exactly what was going on now, definitely. But it kind of freaked me out even farther when seeing this, because she was literally, from what I remember the last time, we were in the car having sex. And then next thing I know, she's literally laying on the concrete right in front of me.
As best you can, keep walking us through that. What happened after you came across that?
The next thing I remember was the person behind me had been saying, the first thing I was coherent to me that I could hear them say was, "Look what the fuck you made me do." But they had said other things. I don't know if it was ramblings. I don't know if it was me in my own head trying to figure out what was going on. It wasn't, but that's the first thing that registered with me that he had said.
Then what happened?
I was pretty much obstructed to, or told to pick her up.
Did you?
Reluctantly, yes.
Will you describe how you picked her up?
I had to somewhat kneel down. I slid my arms under her front half, and then slid my other arms under her legs, and kind of stood up with her in my arms.
At this point, were you able to tell whether she was alive or dead?
I wasn't certain, but it definitely didn't look like she was. There was no, this whole time I hadn't seen any movement at all, or anything that would make me think that she was, alive. I didn't hear any noises or anything like that.
So once you picked her up, what happened?
I was instructed to carry her and put her in the vehicle.
This other person that you've been describing, where was he at this point?
Standing behind me, like I said, a little ways away from me. The firearm still in his hands, pointing in my direction, telling me what to do, but he was off at an angle behind me. Every time I moved, he moved, but kept his same distance away from me. But pretty much almost mirrored what I was doing. He was right along with me.
So did you put her in the vehicle?
Eventually, yes, sir.
Where?
I had to come up, and I put her, sat her in the rear passenger side with the door, because the door was open. I put her in there, and then I top half in, and then I moved her legs and feet into a semi-sitting almost position.
Okay. So you position her in there essentially in a way that someone would normally sit in that
Right.
seat. What happened after that?
I was advised to shut the door, and then I was advised to go around behind the vehicle to my driver's door, and to ultimately get in the vehicle.
Now, George, you say you were advised by this individual. What was their demeanor like?
I would guess the best way to describe it would be threatening, like pretty much forceful, letting me know that this is what I want you to do and you're going to do it, in a way I guess would be the best way to put it.
Was he loud?
Wasn't extremely loud, but more of a I guess maybe it was like a commanding tone, like let me know that he was speaking to me and what he meant everything that he was telling me to do.
I believe you said you closed the door once Nicole was in the vehicle.
On the passenger side, yes, sir.
Do you remember if the window was down?
All of my windows were down.
All, okay. So is that front driver, front passenger, rear driver, those windows were down?
Yes, sir.
When you closed the door, I guess, was Nicole, did you notice anything when you closed the door?
She Kind of, I guess you could say, slouched a little bit more towards she was sitting in the rear seat, but she didn't lean against the door. She actually leaned a little bit away from the door, I guess, like almost sliding to the left a little bit.
And you said, I guess, what did you say happened after you closed the door?
I was pretty much instructed to go around the back of the vehicle, around to my driver's side.
Were you specifically told to go around the back?
I was pretty much told to go in the driver's seat. I don't remember if I was told or if that's the direction I picked, but that's the way I had went around.
And again, that's what you did?
Yes, sir.
And what did that other individual do at this point?
Stayed, like, so pretty much mirrored the way I was moving, and then came behind me after when I got in the driver's seat, and I believe I shut the door first. I don't recall though. He got in the passenger seat behind me and shut the door. But I do remember when I was getting in the driver's seat and I looked in the rear, I could see him in my peripheral, like over here, through the window. He wasn't in the vehicle yet, but he was in the process of getting ready to enter the vehicle.
Let me just make sure I heard you right. So you recall that you were seated in the front driver's seat, and through your peripheral, you could see him through the window, and he was still outside the vehicle?
Through the rear window. If I'm like the seats here, if I look like this, you can see the back window, and I could see him in that vicinity right there. He was only a couple feet away from me.
So what did you say happened after that?
Then he ended up getting in the vehicle and sitting behind me, but angled a little bit this way.
So again, I know you're using your hands.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. You're in the front driver's side. I'm sorry, you're in the driver's seat.
Yes, sir.
This other individual gets in the vehicle from the rear driver's door.
Yes, sir.
Before we keep going with that, the front driver's seat is, I guess, set. Let me rephrase that. The layout, or how that seat is positioned, is based on how it was when you were last driving the vehicle.
Yes, sir.
And how did you have that driver's seat positioned?
The rear back half of the seat was tilted back a little bit. And unfortunately, I have to drive. A lot of people like to get in and put the steering wheel down some, but with me, I have to put it up some, because if not, my legs rub the steering wheel as I'm trying to drive.
And that's how the seat was when you got into it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, you said this other individual got into the vehicle and was not seated directly behind you?
Directly behind me, but off center just a little bit, to like the right side, like right here a little bit, behind me to my, I guess that'd be 5 o'clock.
So, not directly behind you, somewhat closer to the center of that back passenger seat, or back seat?
A little bit over, not center, but moved over a little bit, yes, sir.
What'd you do once you were in the vehicle?
Again, kind of tried to weigh what options I had at this point. It's completely kind of freaked out a little bit. Didn't know what was going to happen. Didn't have any idea what the situation that was going on was going to entail.
What options were you weighing at that point?
Still was running an option, trying to figure out what my options might be.
Did you have an opportunity to ever see this individual's face?
The first time that I saw the best physical image of this face was when I looked in my rearview mirror.
And when was that?
When I first started driving. Because once I started the vehicle, you have your interior lights, and the interior lights were bright enough that I could actually see someone. And I could see the reflection in the mirror. Because I couldn't physically turn around and look at them.
And again, at that point, did you know who that individual was?
Never seen them before in my life.
Do you know who that individual is now?
Now I do.
Who was it?
It was Doug Dietrich.
So let's keep moving. You both get in the vehicle, and what happens next?
I was told I was parked on the right side of the street, and I was told to turn the vehicle around. So I don't recall if it was a Y turn or a U turn, but I turned the vehicle around and went in the opposite direction of what the vehicle was facing.
Did you have your seatbelt on?
No, I actually tried to put it on, and you've seen it on movies before and things like that, and the only thing that come to my mind, the only option I had at that time was to wreck the car. And that's when I thought to reach for my seatbelt and put my seatbelt on, and then I was advised, don't even fucking think about it, don't touch it, when I reached up to grab it.
Were you in pain at this point?
I don't recall. It was more adrenaline pumping. I wouldn't say pain. I wasn't aware of it. I was more shaken and adrenaline just in the moment at the time.
Were you bleeding?
Not that I'm aware of, sir. I had blood on me, but I don't think it was mine.
So you turned the vehicle around?
Yes, sir.
So you were heading back towards the way you originally came from?
Yes, sir.
Keep walking us through that, George. What happened next?
I was driving, and while I was driving, I was told where to turn and which ways to go. I remember turning, I don't remember which direction we turned, but I remember, I want to say it was like a four-way, maybe a stop sign or something, and then I was told to turn it, I want to say it was left. I don't remember, to be completely honest. I just remember I was told directions on which way to go and where to turn.
What was what was Dietrich's demeanor like at this point?
Still behind me, still being forceful, telling me what to do. As far as I could tell, from what I could see from the glancing in the rearview mirror, he still had the firearm on me and was still sitting in that same direction behind me.
While you were driving, did he ever touch you with the firearm?
He nudged me. I can't say what it was that hit me. From what I've seen in his hands, I would believe that's what it was, right behind me on this side. But for certain, I can't say.
So he's telling you to turn whatever he's telling you. Go straight, go left, go right.
Yes, sir.
For the most part, were you on a paved street?
Yes, sir. Lined road, paved road.
Were you being given, I guess, strict directions?
Yes, sir.
It was deliberate, direct.
Right, telling me where to turn here. Yes, sir.
Eventually, did you leave the paved roads?
Yes, sir. We made a left turn onto service road, dirt road.
Were there any lights on that road?
Not that I recall, sir.
You said you turned left onto that
If I'm not mistaken, I believe so.
And that road was not paved?
No, sir. It was, I want to say it was dirt. I don't think it was gravel. I think it was dirt, but it might have had some rocks in it. I remember it wasn't a paved area.
What's going through your mind at this point?
It's not looking good. I'm in the middle of somewhere. I don't know where I am. I have no idea overall what's going on. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what to do in this situation, and I'm trying to figure out the best way for me to remove myself from this situation, if at all possible.
Once you turned onto that dirt, maybe rocky road, did you continue to travel in a straight direction for a very long period?
I don't believe it was a long period. A couple of seconds, maybe a couple hundred feet maybe, but it wasn't long.
Where did you go from?
I was told to turn right.
And did you?
Yes, sir.
Could you observe any of your surroundings at that point?
It was mainly dark. I seen some trees, tall grass. I couldn't tell if it was a field or beginning of woods, or really couldn't tell exactly what it was. I know it wasn't city or anything like that. It was a predominantly, grassy, tall trees and things like that area. I could hear crickets and things like that. I mean, that was about it, though.
Because your windows are down?
Yes, sir.
So again, you turned left onto the first non-paved road, then you turned right, and you just described your surroundings when you turned right. Did you keep traveling in that direction?
I was advised, or he had told me, it looked like it was a wooded area farther out. He said I couldn't definitely tell for sure because it was dark, but there was taller grass and everything. And I was advised when I turned in to go in and come back around like a big U, pretty much. And when I came around, I was facing out in the direction of the way I came in, but just on like the farther side of the field or area.
So again, you turn left onto the non-paved road, you turn right, you can see what you think are woods up ahead, and as you're traveling in that direction, you then turn the vehicle around?
Right, I came in like this, turned around, and stopped, like facing back towards the driveway that I came in.
Why'd you stop?
That's where I was told to stop at.
What happened after that?
I was instructed to turn the vehicle off, and pretty much he had exited the vehicle at the time and told me to get out the vehicle.
Do you remember who got out first?
He did.
Where'd he go when he got out?
Again, stood back, I guess. I guess it'd be more like 8, maybe 9 o'clock behind me. I was in the driver's seat and he was over to the side.
How far away?
It was more towards the back of the vehicle when I first got out.
Then after you were out, where was
He
he?
took a couple steps farther back.
So you did turn off the vehicle?
Yes, sir.
Did you take the keys with you?
No, sir.
So you step out of the vehicle, he's back at, I think you said 8 or 9 o'clock, takes a couple steps back when you get out of the vehicle. Then what happens?
I was told to pretty much reach in from the driver's side and grab Nicole and pretty much bring her out of the vehicle.
You said you did that from the driver's side?
I was in the driver's passenger, the back passenger side. You understand what I'm saying? Driver's side, back passenger.
Yes.
So I was leaned in, and she was, by this time, she had slumped over and was more like her top half was leaning towards the center of the back rear seat. It was like a bench seat.
So she was still mostly in the rear passenger seat where you had placed her before,
Yes, sir.
but she had become slumped over towards the center or the driver's side of the vehicle?
Yes, sir.
And you at that point removed her from the vehicle?
It was somewhat difficult, but yes.
And did you say you did that from the driver's side of the vehicle?
Yes.
So you had to reach from the driver's side over to the passenger side of the
Right. The vehicle's not a huge vehicle, but I leaned in the back door and reached over, and it's on a couple feet to rigidly be able to grab her.
Why didn't you go around to the other side of the car?
That was where I was at, and that's where I was told to do it. How he explained, told me to grab her right then and there. The rear door was still open, so I just reached in and grabbed her because he was standing towards the rear of the vehicle.
He was towards the rear of the vehicle, but he wasn't right at the rear of the vehicle?
He was parallel to the vehicle, and I was up here. He was standing back here. I was up here reaching in the vehicle, and he was standing catty-corner from me.
Did you, I guess, how did you get her out of the vehicle?
I had to pretty much grab her arms or under her arm area and pull her across the seat.
Was that somewhat difficult?
Yes, sir.
Why?
It's pretty much dead weight.
Were you eventually able to get her out of the vehicle?
It took me a moment, but yes.
And did you say that the way you grabbed her, did you reach into the vehicle and were you able to pick her up, or did you
Kind of pulled her to the edge, and I put my arm under her again, and then kind of scooped, kind of carried her again with where she would be in my arms. I guess is the best way to describe it.
So going by your arm position there, it looks as though you're holding basically her entire body at one point,
Yes, sir.
with one arm, I guess, by her upper body, and then where would your other arm be?
Towards her, like, knee, thigh area, calf area.
What was Dietrich doing at this point?
He was standing behind me with he still had the firearm in his hands, pretty much directing me what to do.
And what was that?
He had backed up and he had told me to come down, and it's like in, I don't know if it'd be considered a ravine. It's not like really steep, but it's, one form we call them a ditch, but I don't know like what you would call it here, but it's just like a little sloped area, and at the bottom there was tall grass, just a bunch of brush, shrubs, I guess, different types of wild growth.
Were you able to continue carrying her that whole time?
For the most part, it was kind of awkward because when you're carrying someone, and I guess and they know they're being, it's a lot easier to control their weight. But at this point, it was kind of like everything was kind of loose and all over, all over the place. So it was kind of hard. So I was kind of almost stumbling a little bit, trying to keep the balance of it.
Did her position in your arms eventually change?
Eventually, I had to, when I had turned around, I was looking at his direction. I couldn't hold her legs and at the same time, so I ended up dropping her legs, but still holding under. Like I had my arms underneath her arms or armpit area.
So at some point, I think what you're saying is her feet are on the ground, but you're still holding her by her armpits?
Right, I'm holding her up and her feet are more, if I'm standing this way, I dropped her feet and she was kind of like, we were at a little bit of an angle at the, like I'd say the beginning, of where it starts to go down, just where the ground descends down.
You said at some point you're facing Dietrich?
Yes, sir.
What's going on at that point?
He was basically telling me to put her down and put her in that area. Or place her in the area where I was, and he was instructing me on what to do.
So if her feet are on the ground as you described, and yet you still have to move.
When I had let her go, he had pretty much stopped, and I was at the area pretty much where I had been instructed to let her go at.
Attorney Stebbins, I need a new notebook. It's been about an hour and 40 minutes for the jury. It's time for our afternoon break. So 3:15 we'll be back, ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
Had throughout the day, Mr. Burch is still on the stand. Mr. Burch, you're still under oath. And Attorney Stebbins is still in his direct examination. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. George, we left off, I guess, when you were at the field that we now know as Hoffman Avenue. So let's just pick up where we left off. Essentially, at some point you said you could no longer carry Nicole, and her legs, I guess, went down to the ground.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sorry.
And at that point, you were then, I guess, pulling her by her armpits.
Like I said, I was pretty much in the vicinity of where I was told to go with her at the time. So when I dropped her, I didn't do much moving after that.
And what made you think you were getting into the vicinity where she was supposed to be?
I went to the area where I had been told to go, and he had stopped in front of me in the area, so I was facing him. He was 5 feet roughly, not exact, but he was about 5 feet away from me, 6 feet away from me roughly. And he was in front of me. I'd say he was at 1 o'clock.
Keep walking us through that. What happened next?
Pretty much I was advised to put her down. At this time, he was kind of like looking around motion, kind of, I don't know if he was taking in, if he heard something, or if he was looking like around just to take in what was going on around him, or looking to see if, I don't know if somebody could see us, or what was going on at that time. But that was the motion that he was making at the time.
What happened next?
He was in the vicinity of me, and the whole time I'm trying to figure out a way to remove myself from the situation, or get out of this situation, or what I can do to do it. When I noticed, because up until this time, he had been either in a direction where I could not face him or get to him, or he was far enough away from me, but he was constantly watching me the whole time, or constantly paying attention on my movements and what I was doing. At this time, when I seen him kind of look away or not pay direct attention to me, was when I kind of went like this to draw his attention more to what was going on than to me. And when I did, Nicole kind of flipped over like this way. Her feet were more ahead of her, and flipped over. And when he kind of paid attention to what was going on at that time, that's when I turned, and with everything I had, I lunged at him and pushed him as hard as I possibly could at that time.
Did he fall down?
I don't know. He stumbled backwards. Did he fall down? I don't know, because I broke for it.
What'd you do?
Hauled ass to my car, or my truck.
How far were you from it?
I'd say 10, 15 feet maybe give or take a little bit.
Keep walking us through that. What happened next?
I jumped in the vehicle, started it, and I remember trying to take off, but when I took off, if you slam it down too fast, it doesn't lock and drive. So I actually ended up slamming it down to a lower gear at first, because I remember when I turned off, I came around and went to the dirt road, and I remember it was bucking. I couldn't figure out what was going on until I had enough. I noticed that it wasn't in drive. That was the whole reason why I couldn't go, like really go anywhere.
Did you floor it when you got into it?
Not essentially. I didn't stomp on the gas. No.
Was there a reason for that?
Just I wanted to be able to take off, and I knew that if you stomp it, I'm in dirt. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to take off. Like I didn't. Sometimes it just bogs right down. It's not going to go anywhere.
And then you said, when did you realize that you were in a lower gear and not drive?
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
When did you realize you were in a lower gear and not in drive?
After, because I was facing towards the driveway, so once I really got to the driveway and kind of went at an angle out of there, I couldn't, like you could feel it kind of like it wasn't going like it was supposed to, and that's when I realized, like as I was getting ready to turn off the dirt road, that I wasn't in drive.
Okay. So did you put it in drive?
Yes, sir.
And then, did you get back on the paved road?
Yes, sir.
And at that point, what was going through your mind?
A lot of stuff. Fear, adrenaline. Wasn't sure what had just happened. Was somewhat glad that I was out of that situation. But kind of still freaked out, I guess would be the best way to describe it.
So what'd you do next?
I remember eventually I actually lit a cigarette, trying to calm down because I didn't know nothing. I didn't know my environment. I didn't know where I was, and I just wanted to get out of there. I just wanted to get home or somewhere safe.
So what'd you do?
I actually had to pull out my phone, and the Samsung has a button on it that you press the button and you say, "Hey Google," and then you tell them what you want. And I told them to give me directions on how to get back to 912 South Greenwood.
Do you remember where you were when you asked your phone for directions?
I have not a clue.
Did your phone end up giving you directions?
Yes, sir.
Did you follow those directions?
Yes, sir. It'll, if you enable it, which I've always had it, it talks to you, so you don't even have to look at it.
You said you were smoking a cigarette?
I don't know if I still was or not. I remember that somewhere in that time I had smoked a cigarette or was smoking a cigarette. They were in my center console.
You remember doing anything else on your drive home?
What do you mean?
On your way home, do you remember doing anything else while you were driving?
I remember looking over and seeing some stuff that was hers sitting in the vehicle.
Do you remember if this stuff was in the front or the back seat?
I don't remember exactly where it all was. I knew that it was multiple of things. It wasn't just like one item.
What would you do with it?
Honestly, I freaked out and I threw it out the window.
Do you remember which window you threw it out of?
It was the passenger side. I don't remember if it was the front passenger or the side passenger. The Blazer's not that huge of a vehicle, so literally I can reach to the back window.
Do you remember if, I guess, was there a lot of stuff? Did you make multiple throws? Do you remember any of that?
I remember, well, as far as I can remember, I made 2 throws. I don't remember being more than that, but it could have been. I can't say for certain. Like I said, I was completely razzled.
After that, did you, I guess, go home?
Eventually, yes, sir.
What'd you do when you got home?
I went in the house, honestly, and took a shower to wash the. I had blood on me, on my hands and on me from where I'd carried her.
Did you have blood on your clothes?
I believe so, yes, sir.
What'd you do with your clothes?
I took a shower, ended up washing my clothes.
Is anybody awake when you got home?
No, sir.
Were you bleeding?
Not anywhere that I found. No, sir.
Over the course of this process, taking a shower, doing your laundry, were you in pain?
I noticed when I was washing my hair that my back part right here roughly was sore. I wouldn't say in like excruciating pain or anything, but I noticed it was sore, like I had bumped my head or something.
Was there a cut?
No.
Were you bleeding?
No, sir.
What'd you do after you got out of the shower?
I went upstairs into my room, and I remember the house that I'm in it's an older house, and there's like plaster stencils on the ceiling, and I remember sitting there just like trying to replay things that had happened over the night and wondering like what in the hell has just happened? What just went on? Trying to just piece it all together. Was it just a nightmare, or just what?
Then what?
Eventually, I ended up passing out because everything had. For a while, when your adrenaline was rushing and everything was going on, it seemed like everything was moving so fast, but at the same time, it was moving really slow, and almost in slow motion. And then, once I had a chance to actually sit there for a second, it was just like completely draining. Like everything had just. You feel this overwhelming exhaustion.
What's the next thing you remember?
I want to say it was Ed waking me up, or waking up someone hearing a noise or something waking up.
Okay, and then what happened?
I remember Ed saying, "Come on, we had to leave." We had to go and get gas, and then we were heading for the fishing trip.
And that's when you went to Racine?
Yes, sir.
And you went fishing?
Yes, sir.
You didn't call 911?
No, sir.
You didn't call Jordan?
No, sir.
You didn't tell Ed?
No, sir.
You went fishing?
Yes, sir.
Why would you not tell someone what you just went through?
One, I didn't even know who to talk to. I didn't. How do you have a conversation with someone about something like that? Like, what do you say? I grew up an only child, and I've experienced a lot of things that sometimes you just keep them inside, and it just. Now I see that it's completely wrong, and I should have said something or should have done something, but in the time, I kind of imploded and kept everything inside.
Help me understand this, George. Why would you not call the cops?
I was scared to speak to the cops.
Why?
I was on probation.
What were you on probation for?
Grand larceny.
What's that?
It's pretty much simple theft.
So you were on probation for theft of property,
Yes, sir.
and that played into why you didn't speak to the cops?
Yes, sir.
Well, what would have happened? I mean, what were you afraid of?
5 years in prison. At minimum. My suspended time was like it's roughly about 5 years.
Why didn't you tell Ed?
I honestly don't. I don't know why I didn't say anything. I don't know if it was just where I'm from. You don't talk. You don't tell about things you've seen. You don't tell on people. People get killed all the time where I'm from for that. And I feared for my own safety if I would have ever said anything, because like I said, where I'm from, it happens all the time. People go to telling people and tell things and they end up dead. They never make it to court. They never make it anywhere. They find them dead.
Did you follow this case on the news?
Yes, sir.
What did you learn from the news?
That the body had been found, and inevitably, or after the next couple of days, that Doug had been arrested.
You still didn't come forward with information?
No, sir. At that point, my reasoning was still somewhat the same, but in my opinion, they had the person that had done it, and I figured that they would see that and they would know that.
When did you learn that Doug was released?
I never did until I was arrested.
George, did you murder Nicole Vanderheiden?
No, sir. Definitely not.
Do you know who did?
Doug Dietrich.
I have no further questions. Thanks, George.
Cross-examination.
Mr. Burch, you said the first time that you learned that Doug Dietrich had been released was on the day that you were arrested.
I believe so, yes, sir.
So you followed this case for 64 different hits, 64 different views on news articles regarding this case, including 7 consecutive views of the law enforcement officers asking for help, asking for information on this case. And you want the jury to believe that you didn't see a single article, news story, radio version about this case, about Doug being released, just 4 days after the last time we showed you that entire list of views?
No, sir.
No, sir, you don't want them to believe that? Because actually, I think you do want them to believe that.
No, sir, I did not know that he had been released.
So you followed this case intently for 2 full weeks and never saw another thing about it again for the next 3 months.
No, sir. The first time I remember seeing anything about it, and it wasn't even about him being released, was actually they were having a softball benefit for her in her memory 3 days before I was arrested for Labor Day weekend.
Sounds like you still followed it pretty darn closely then.
No, it was on the news.
Sure. You watch the news regularly, right?
No,
this
we
case
watch-
was covered all the time.
When you watch regular TV, they show certain things.
So big stories, like when a murder suspect gets released, right?
I don't know, sir. I never saw it.
This isn't Hampton, Virginia. This isn't Newport News. People don't get killed around here all the time.
Yeah, General objection, I think the case being a little argumentative and
He's already asked and received an
It's
answer.
cross-examination, but it's somewhat argumentative. I'll sustain the objection. Go ahead.
In fact, the first time you viewed a news story in this case was prior to Mr. Dietrich ever being arrested, correct?
I believe so, yes.
You were looking at this 6 in the morning on the 22nd, right?
You have the records. I don't know, sir. I don't recall.
You were looking at it constantly after this event happened and before Mr. Dietrich was ever taken to jail.
I believe so, yes, sir.
Yet you did not come forward. You did not provide information to law enforcement.
No, sir.
You'll have the jury believe that's because you were on probation.
Yes, sir.
That's the reason. You had a grand larceny charge, which you described as simple theft. And you didn't want to do a little time for simple theft, so you thought you would let the murderer of Nicole Vanderheiden potentially go free.
I don't know how you see 5 years, but that's not little time. And second of all, I paid attention to what was going on and seeing that he was arrested.
If you didn't do anything wrong in this crime, why would you have anything to fear from your probation agent?
Because I was not supposed to be in Wisconsin.
You had absconded from your probation. Is that correct?
Well, I'm in Wisconsin, sir, and I was on Virginia probation.
When you sat down and you explained to your kids that you were moving to Wisconsin, is that one of the things you guys talked about?
I don't make my kids aware of my personal problems when it comes to things like that.
Despite the fact that you were on probation in Virginia and your wife lived in Virginia and your kids were in Virginia, you up and moved to Wisconsin. Is that right?
I was visiting, sir.
You were visiting here? You went and moved
I
here?
didn't have permanent residence, sir.
You've been here from March of 2016 until September of 2016 when you were arrested, correct?
Yes, sir.
You didn't think that was your permanent residence? You hadn't moved here? You're just visiting?
I had not established my own residence, sir. I was staying with someone else. So I decided exactly what I was going to do.
Isn't it true that you didn't tell law enforcement about this because you didn't think anybody was going to believe this story?
No, sir, not at all.
You thought that this was a perfectly logical, reasonable story that anybody would believe?
It's the truth.
The truth is that before May 21st of 2016, you never met Nicole Vanderheiden, correct?
20th to 21st, yes, sir.
The first time you ever saw her was when you observed her in that bar that night at Richard Cranium's, correct?
Yes, sir.
The truth is that you were attracted to Nikki from the moment you saw her, right?
I thought she was attractive, yes, sir.
When did you decide that you were going to have sex with her?
Later on, after we had hung out together, and we had both expressed we were into each other.
Is that when you went to your home, you were going to have sex with her when you got there?
I hoped so.
When you left your home, did you bring a condom with you?
I think I did, but I don't recall.
You drove Nikki home that night, right? That's the truth.
Yes, sir.
You drove her to an area that you'd never been to, that you were not familiar with at all, correct?
Yes, sir.
You drove her down Broadway, you crossed the bridge into Pier, correct?
I believe so. I'm not familiar with the area, but if you say so.
And you drove down Highway G past a bunch of businesses, past some residential areas.
I guess so, sir. I was more interested in talking to her in the conversations we were having. But if you say there's businesses there, I'm sure there is.
Well, to be fair, Mr. Burch, not only did you drive her that night, but you're also familiar with all the maps in this case, with the location, with all the discovery that was provided. You know where that location is now, right?
I couldn't go there right now if you told me you freed me from this charge if I could find it.
You drove Nicole out in front of her house, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's the truth. You parked there, out in front of Berkeley Road, correct?
Yes, sir.
You had every intention of having sex with Nicole that night, correct?
I was hoping that was the way it was going. That's the way it seemed like it was leading. Yes, sir.
Did Nicole tell you that she had a young baby at home, that she was a nursing mother?
I believe she had said something about it. The nursing part, I'm not sure. I do believe she said she had a child because she had mentioned to me that she had a babysitter.
I thought she told you that the kids were out of town with their dad.
I said those two, but I also said when we got there, the light was on. She said the babysitter was up.
Why would that be a problem? Why wouldn't you just ask the babysitter to go home and go inside?
Sir, I don't know. I've never been in her house. I don't know her babysitter.
So Nicole would rather have sex with you in front of her neighbor's home with your butt hanging out the door of the car than ask the babysitter to go home?
Sir, I don't know. I wasn't the one making decisions.
You mentioned that you started fooling around with Nikki, correct?
Yes, sir.
At some point her shirt came off, right?
Yes, sir.
She had on two shirts, right? A tank top and an overshirt?
I believe so. I'm not exactly sure.
But they were both completely off at some point, right?
Yes, sir.
Were you touching her breasts?
A little bit.
Did you note that they were engorged?
I noticed they were big. Engorged, I wouldn't say. I'd never seen them before, so I wasn't sure exactly what they were supposed to look like.
She hadn't nursed in 7 hours.
I don't know that.
Was there actual breast milk in her breast?
I don't remember seeing any. In her breast, I couldn't tell you. I don't remember physically seeing any. I didn't spend a long time in her breast area.
Did she tell you that she was uncomfortable?
Not that I recall, sir.
That they were sore when you touched her?
Not that I recall.
You started out with Nicole fooling around in the front seat of the car, right?
Yes, sir.
Is the dome light on or off at that time?
I don't believe the dome light worked, but I don't recall.
It's convenient. You said that all of the windows to the vehicle were open.
Yes, sir.
And when did all of the windows get opened?
I believe they were open when I was driving because it's a nice day. It was probably in the 70s or 80s that day, roughly. So I like to drive with the windows down whenever
Open.
I have a chance.
Back, front, all the way open.
They go down predominantly all the way down the back. Yes, sir.
Both were open all the way in the front.
I believe they were all the way down.
After you are making out with Nicole in the front seat, you at some point moved to the back seat of the car, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you walk around to the passenger side of the vehicle to the back seat, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you don't remember how Nicole got into the back seat?
I don't remember if she got out and got into the back or if she just climbed over the center console and got into the back. There's no way I could climb to the back
Why'd you walk around to the passenger side?
because I'm big and I wouldn't fit that easily behind the driver's seat.
So the driver's seat had been pushed all the way back?
I don't know if it was all the way back, but I can barely fit in the car as it is, and if it had been moved at all, I wouldn't be able to fit back there.
But Doug fit back there just fine.
I believe so. I'm just fine. I don't know. You'd have to ask him about that.
You said that you were having sexual intercourse with Nicole while she was in the back seat of that car, right?
Eventually, yes, sir.
And what did she tell you about how painful it was?
She didn't express that she was in any pain at all.
You were here through Dr. Rogalska's testimony about the contusions and abrasions on her mons pubis, right?
Yes, sir.
About the contusions on the vestibule, her urethral orifice, those contusions. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
The contusions on her lower vaginal vault, you remember that, right?
Yes, sir.
Blood in her vaginal vault, you remember that?
I believe so.
Deep, soft tissue contusions to her mons pubis and abrasions to her left breast. You heard the doctor explain those injuries and explain that they would be painful injuries, even if they were consensual. You heard that, right?
I believe that's what she said, but I'm not sure.
Caused by penetration. Caused by penetration.
Correct.
And that was part of your not gentle sexual activity that you had with her, right?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
That was all a result of your not gentle sexual activity that you had with her?
If that's the way you would put it, yes, sir.
I think that's the way you put it.
It wasn't gentle, no.
It was painful.
That I don't know.
Painful because it wasn't consensual, right?
No, sir, that's not true.
What really happened was you drove Nicole home 20 miles away from where you lived, fully expecting that you were going to have sex, right? That was your expectation. You were going to have sex. That's why you're driving her home, right?
I was hoping that we would. It was leading from what had happened before and where we had spoken. It seemed like that's what was going to happen.
And when you get there, and it becomes clear that Nikki isn't going to have sex with you, when she attempts to go into her house and leave your vehicle, that's when your mood changes, right?
No, sir.
That's when things get aggressive, don't they?
Not at all.
That's when you grab that cord and strangle her, don't you?
No, sir, not at all.
That's when Nikki gets slammed on the ground repeatedly when she's trying to run toward her house, when those bloodstains lead in a direction back to her home.
None of that is true.
Well, how do you know? You were out cold when Nikki was assaulted.
Because you said I did it.
Nikki was strangled. She had a fractured jaw, correct?
I don't know, sir. That's what the medical examiner said. But I can't speak for sir. I'm not a doctor.
You heard all of that, right?
Yes, sir.
You saw her injuries. You sat through court to see the defensive injuries to her hands, to her feet, to her palms, to her fingernails, that she fought for her life, right?
According to what the doctor said, yes.
And you were just out cold during all of this?
Yes, sir.
And you say that Doug Dietrich did this, but of course, you didn't see that happen either, did you?
I cannot say for certain, no.
And you'll have the jury believe that Doug Dietrich sat there and did all of these things to his girlfriend while you were just out cold on the lawn hanging out.
I wasn't hanging out. I'd been knocked out from behind, sir, when I didn't know anyone was behind me.
Actually, you didn't say you were knocked out from behind. You didn't remember what happened. You were having sex, and the next thing you knew, you woke up on the ground, right?
It made me lead me to believe that I had been knocked out because I didn't pass out from standing there.
But you don't recall any pain, so how do you know?
I didn't recall any pain until later on that day when I got out of the situation and was not completely all worked up.
And then you only recall just maybe a small little bump on the back of your head.
I remember being painful in the back of my head.
Not even a bump. Because Ed Jackson would have seen that.
I'm 6'7", so it's hard for someone to see the top of my head.
When they're sitting on a boat within 10 feet from you all afternoon.
That I don't know, sir, what he saw.
You never met Doug Dietrich before that night, right?
No, sir.
So rather than just beating you or killing you in the middle of the street, he decided to enlist you, a total stranger, to help him dispose of the body of his girlfriend.
I don't know what his plans were.
He had you drive them to a remote location, correct?
Yes, sir.
He thought it would be a good idea to have a complete stranger know where he's dumping a body?
I don't know what he thought. You'd have to ask Mr. Dietrich about that.
And you described taking Nicole's body. You're the one who carried her body to her final resting place, did you not?
If that was her final resting place, yes, sir.
You dragged her into that field. You dumped her on the ground, right?
I didn't drag her anywhere.
You said your fireman's carried?
I said I
dragged her?
picked her up and carried her over there, and at the end, I had dropped her feet. I didn't say anything about dragging her.
You didn't say anything about dropping her feet. You said you had her by the arms. Which is it?
My exact story, if you would go back and look, was that I picked her up, carried her out of the car over to the position of roughly where it was, and let her go and had my arms under her towards the end.
And then you dropped her feet and you're carrying her?
I didn't go any farther. I said that already, sir.
You stopped right there.
Roughly, we didn't go much farther than anywhere, right there.
How far down the embankment were you?
We were at the descend, so I don't know how far that goes down. I'd never been there before, so I couldn't tell you exactly how far I was down there, and it was dark.
You were down the embankment?
We were not at the bottom, no. It was still inclined.
And Doug was coming down the embankment with you?
He was standing in front of me. As I was looking that direction, he was in front of me in the incline like this. He was not ahead of me. He was like right in front of me.
The record should reflect that the witness had one hand out and the other hand directly in front of him.
I would say
His other hand, is that
1
correct?
o'clock roughly, sir. 1 o'clock in front of me, yes, sir.
So just so we have a record, go ahead.
So clear this up for me. You're backing down the embankment with Nicole's body in a fireman's carry position, right?
No.
What are you doing?
I told you before, and I will say it one more time for you, sir. I was carrying her over to this area. When I got to the final position, I let her legs go because I could barely carry her because it was all like going off and on, like it was kind of hard to manage carrying her without losing my balance. That is when I let her go, and I was still bracing her with this arm. I ended up putting both my arms under her shoulders. Douglas Dietrich was standing in front of me at this time.
Looking right at you, just like you're looking
1
right
o'clock,
at me.
roughly. Yes, sir.
Is he closer to their neighbor?
And is Doug higher or lower than you in terms of the ground?
I am not sure. We were roughly on the plane of going
So
down.
you're standing sideways on the embankment?
1 foot was higher than the other, yes, sir. Because we were facing this way parallel, and the embankment goes this way, so we were standing in front at the embankment. He wasn't down it, and I wasn't up it, and vice versa. We were parallel, I guess you would say, to the embankment.
He decided that rather than letting you carry Nikki to her final spot, he was going to follow you down there?
I believe so, sir. I don't know what he decided on doing.
And you lunged at him uphill and you pushed him to the ground?
We were on the same plane again, sir. I didn't lunge uphill at anyone.
You lunged and you shoved him,
Yes, sir.
and you ran,
Yes, sir.
just like in the movies, right?
I don't know what movie you're referring to, sir.
I don't know, you referred to the movies before when you were talking about how in the movies they put the seatbelt on and they
How you try to think of ways to get out of a situation.
That's what you're doing now, aren't you?
No, sir, at all.
Judge, objection, this is getting a little argumentative.
Sustained, it's argumentative. Go ahead.
You testified earlier that you realized only after a period of time that you had pulled that lever too far and put the vehicle into a lower gear, right?
Yes, sir.
When did you realize that?
When I was trying to drive off the dirt road into the main road, roughly,
So while you were in the dirt road, you were going pretty slow?
I don't know how fast I was going. I wouldn't say it was slow, but I wasn't going as high rate of speed. No, sir.
Possible that you realized that you had lowered the car into a too low of a gear only after you saw that the state provided to you, you traveled 82 feet in 15 seconds?
I do not know how far I traveled, sir.
82 feet in 15 seconds, what is that, 5 miles an hour?
I don't know.
Just cruising slowly out of that field, right? 'Cause you're not in a hurry.
Briefly,
Come up.
So after you meandered slowly out of that farm field and got out to Hoffman Road, you said at some point you had to ask Google how to get home?
I never said I meandered slowly out of the road, sir. But yes, after that I did use Google to get home.
And you don't recall where you were when you entered those directions into,
No clue. I had never been in the area before.
had you turned right out of the driveway?
I don't recall. I think I might have, but I don't recall to say certainly.
When you got to the edge of the road there by Hoffman and GV, did you happen to notice the sheriff's station right there on the left?
I don't know where that is.
Your testimony that Mr. Dietrich does know where that is.
If you say so.
You were here, weren't you?
I believe he does, but I can't. Like I said, I can't speculate on what Mr. Dietrich knows.
You drove right by that station, right by that sheriff's station, coming and going, didn't you?
Not that I'm aware of, sir. I didn't see anything or anything that stood out that would say, "Hey, this is a sheriff's station."
You didn't see it all lit up at night with the big gold star?
I didn't honestly pay any attention to it, sir.
You had an opportunity that night, could have stopped right at the sheriff's office and reported this. You also could have called 911 that night, right? Immediately after leaving, you could have called 911.
If you say so, sir.
It's not if I say so. You're telling me you couldn't have called 911? You had your phone,
I'm sure I physically could have pushed 911 button. Yes, sir.
but you chose not to call this in.
Correct, sir.
And you said yourself you didn't even know for sure that she was dead. You thought she was dead, but you didn't even know.
For everything that I'd seen, I thought she was, but I didn't.
You didn't
Physically,
know.
I didn't check her pulse. No, sir, I did not.
And this body you just dumped in the woods and went about your day. You didn't call it in at all, right?
No, sir, I did not.
Instead of holding on to those clothes, which may have helped exculpate you, because you didn't know, right? You don't know whose DNA is on those clothes. You don't know what's not on those clothes. Instead of holding on to those clothes and bringing them in and explaining your story to the sheriff's office, you toss them out your window?
I spazzed out. I freaked out. I was trying to do it. I wasn't thinking clearly at the time, to be completely honest. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to do.
For the
I've
next
never
4
been in a
months?
situation like that before, sir.
Is that true?
Is what true, sir? I've never been in a situation where I was made to carry a body. No, sir, I haven't.
You went home, and the next day you were with Ed Jackson, right?
Yes, sir.
You drove to Racine with Ed Jackson
He drove. I slept most of the way.
because you were physically exhausted from your efforts the previous evening?
I hadn't slept much. No, sir.
In fact, you said you were exhausted, right?
Physically draining. Yes, sir, from all the stress and I guess everything just happening at one time. Yes, sir, I believe so.
You were passed out in the car ride down there. You spent how many hours with Ed on the boat that day?
I'm not sure. There was multiple people there, so it wasn't just me and Ed. It's people I didn't know. I had only met Mike once before, and I had never met his hand that was helping.
Clearly, you must have been thinking about this horrendous event that just happened to you, right?
Yes, sir, I was.
Was that in your head when you had the big smile and the fish in your hands? Or is that you were still thinking about Nikki?
I don't recall what I was thinking at that time, sir.
You spent the night in Racine with Mr. Jackson, correct?
He was there, yes, sir.
Did the two of you sleep in a camper outside the residence at Mr. Hankey's house?
I stayed up for hours. He went to sleep as soon as we got there.
And you went fishing again the next day with Mr. Jackson?
First thing in the morning.
You didn't talk to him in the camper at all when you were awake at night, not able to process what had happened?
I wasn't in the camper. He went in the camper and went to sleep. I was sitting on the front porch smoking a cigarette.
So were you not even in the camper at all that night?
Later on, he went to sleep at roughly about, I'm not for certain, but I would say it was roughly about 10 o'clock. I never made it back to the camper until about 2. I couldn't go to sleep. I was just stressed out.
And the next day you went fishing again in the morning, right?
Yes, sir.
And then you drove back from Racine. Ed drove.
Yes, sir.
Rode back from Racine with Ed in
Yes,
the car.
sir.
You were in the car with him for 2.5 hours.
I fell asleep while he was driving. Yes, sir.
You fell asleep again.
Yes, sir.
Now, you described on direct, you described Ed as a father figure to you.
Right.
He was the only one you could talk to after you lost your father, correct?
Pretty much he's the only one I'd ever talked to. Yes, sir.
And you didn't share any of this with Ed Jackson.
No, sir. The Ed that I met here is not the same Ed that I had hung out with for a long time.
He would say that about you too, wouldn't he?
I don't know if he would or not.
The Ed that you met here wasn't the same Ed. The Ed that
He
paid
was
for your
married.
ticket to get here. Let me ask the questions, Mr. Burch.
Judge,
Look, it's a stressful situation for everybody, Mr. Burch. Just wait for the district attorney to ask his question. When he's done, you can give your answer, and obviously, Attorney Lucia, let him finish his answer. All right, let's try again. Go ahead with your question.
Ed Jackson paid for your train ticket to come to Green Bay, correct?
Him or his wife, yes.
He drove down to Chicago to get you, to pick you up and bring you into his home, correct?
Yes, sir.
He put you up in his home when you had nowhere else to go, correct?
I never said I didn't have anywhere else to go, but here, I didn't know anyone, so yes.
You were on the outs with your wife. You came all the way to Wisconsin, to a place that you have no connections at all, to stay with Mr. Jackson, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
He gave you a phone to use, right?
I had funds to buy my own phone. It was his wife's idea to put me on the plan. I was going to go to Walmart and buy my own phone.
He allowed you to use his truck?
Yes, sir,
You
because
then
I was
allowed
helping
him to
him.
wait, Mr. Burch, but
I was answering his question, Your Honor.
No,
I
he
agree, he was finishing the answer to his
All right,
question.
so the question was about the truck. He allowed you to use his truck, and your answer, Mr. Burch, is what?
I was originally given the truck because I was helping him with his business, going and getting stuff and parts and things like that, and helping him out around town doing things. That's how I originally got the truck.
And he also allowed you to use his Blazer, correct?
Yes, sir.
So this Ed Jackson, who gave you all of these things, who helped you get a new start, you did not trust that Ed to tell him about this horrible thing that happened to you?
To be honest, sir, I didn't trust anyone.
Because you were worried you wouldn't be believed?
No, sir, not at all.
Or is it because you hadn't formulated what to say yet?
That's not it at all, sir. That's not true, your statement you just made.
When was the first time you ever became aware that Doug Dietrich was outside with you when you were having sex with Nicole?
When I woke up, or was awakened, I guess is the way best way to put it.
Was it a well-lit area where you could see people coming from the house?
No, sir, it wasn't a well-lit area. There was not a house. What house are you referring to?
From the Dietrich house, right across the street.
The DJ house was not right across the street, sir.
Oh, you were parked back in front of Mr. Peterson's house?
You showed the pictures, and it showed that I was off catty corner. The house was over this direction, and we were over here.
And I'm just clarifying that it wasn't a well-lit area, right?
I said that, yes, sir.
Mr. Dietrich's coming out of the house, and you didn't notice him at all when he was coming out of the house.
No, sir, I was paying more attention to what was going on at hand at the time.
But you were.
I don't understand what you mean by that.
It's just a comment.
Let's keep it to questioning, please. Your next question.
You had all the windows in the vehicle open, you couldn't hear Mr. Dietrich coming?
No, sir, I didn't.
He walked around behind you, presumably because you said you felt pain in the back of your head. You didn't hear him walking around behind you?
No, sir, I did not.
You said several times that Mr. Dietrich advised you to do something. I think that's the language you specifically used. When he was advising you about what to do with Nikki, how was he talking to you?
Directing in more of a forceful manner.
Was he loud?
He wasn't screaming, if that's what you're asking.
I'm asking if he was loud. I wasn't there.
He was not speaking in a regular tone. I don't know what you perceive as loud. If you could explain to me, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Would the neighbors have heard?
I don't know, sir.
How many different times did he advise you?
I can't say for certain.
And I believe that your testimony was that the first time that you saw Nikki, she was directly behind your vehicle. Is that right?
She was toward the rear end of the, yes, sir.
And just to clarify, you saw none of the struggle that occurred between Nikki and Doug in your story.
Yes, sir, I never saw any of the struggle issues.
By the time you next saw Nikki, she was not moving.
Correct. If I would have seen the struggle issues, sir, I wouldn't have stood by.
You would have fought back, right?
Excuse me?
You wouldn't have stood by. You'd have fought back.
I would have done whatever I could to help.
You're a big guy. You're a linebacker. You're an athlete, right?
Back when I was younger, yes, sir. But over time, as you get older, your body starts to break down.
And you indicate, well, how old are you, Mr. Burch?
I just turned 40 on Valentine's Day.
When you came to, you indicated that Mr. Dietrich was standing there behind you. Is that right?
Somewhat, you say behind me, yes, sir.
I-
It was behind me, not directly behind me, but to the angle a little bit, yes, sir.
But he was just standing there, and Nikki was already lying motionless by the vehicle, right?
I didn't know that at the time.
But you didn't see her move or change
I
positions.
didn't even see Nikki at the time.
Well, did Mr. Dietrich move from his position behind you before you came to and realized where you were?
I don't know what he did before I came to.
After you came to, but before you moved.
He stayed behind me,
So he stayed behind you the whole time.
predominantly to 7, 8 o'clock roughly.
So he wasn't assaulting Nikki or moving Nikki's body or anything like that, right?
At the time, no.
He's just standing there calmly holding the gun over you?
I wouldn't say calmly, sir, because though I remember him poking me with the gun as he was standing behind me before I pulled my pants up, and that's when he told me, "Don't fucking think about it."
And were you thinking about it?
Thinking about what to do, because I had no idea what was going on and what to do. It's not common that you wake up on the grass with your pants around your ankles.
What kind of gun was it?
That I don't know. It was a handgun is all I know, sir. I couldn't see it to determine it.
Did you see whether it was a revolver, whether it was a .40 caliber?
I don't know the caliber. I don't believe it was a revolver, but I don't know. I'm not that well versed in firearms, sorry. I've not been...
Your Honor?
Come forward.
So you said before that had this been a struggle and you had observed it, you would have done everything that you could have to help out, right?
If there was anything I could do, yes, sir.
could have reported it to the police, right?
You asked me about the struggle when it was happening, sir.
So you'd report a struggle, but not dumping a body in a field.
It's not what I'm talking about, sir.
When you pulled up on the house at Berkeley Road, you said you pulled up in the area where roughly we showed it on the map, right? So it was before the Peterson house, or just before the Peterson house on the right side of the road?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
You said Nikki advised you to pull up there.
Yes, sir, I'd never been in the area. I didn't know the area.
She didn't tell you to go to the driveway.
No, sir.
She didn't invite you in her home.
No, sir.
That's because she didn't want you in her home, right?
I don't know, sir, if that would be the case.
She didn't want to be with you at all after she got out of you the ride home, right?
That is not true, sir.
She wanted that ride home and you wanted more, isn't that right?
That's not true at all, sir.
And when you finally left the area of Berkeley Road with Nikki's body in the back seat of your car, you took a right on the GV, correct?
If you say so, I don't recall. I'm not familiar with the area, so I don't know which way we definitely went, for sure.
So you went back out of that subdivision the way you came in, right?
I believe so.
And the first intersection is a roundabout.
I don't know.
To the left is where you came from,
I don't know.
with businesses and lights and a school.
Sir, I don't know the area, so I'm not sure.
Well, were you looking around when you were driving? When you left?
I don't recall. I know that I was completely stressed out trying to figure out what was going on, trying to take everything in that's happening. I don't recall what was around me, to be completely honest, sir.
Sure. Trying to
And then-
find the first place to put a body.
Excuse me, sir? I didn't
Trying to
understand
find the
that.
first good place to put a body.
No, sir.
You pass a rural area on the left that doesn't have trees. You take the first left. You drive up the road until the first spot where both sides of the road are clear. And you drive through a path and put the body in the woods.
Are you asking me a question or making a statement?
I'm asking you a question.
No, sir, that's not what happened.
Well, that is what happened. You're just saying someone else told you to do it.
I don't know the exact directions, sir, so if that's what you say happened, that might be the directions, but I'm not sure.
When Nikki was in the backseat of the car having sex with you, her clothes were totally off?
If I remember correctly, yes, sir.
Her underwear were off?
I believe so. I don't remember them being in the way. No, sir.
Her pants were off?
I believe they were, sir. Yes, sir. But I'm not 100% sure. I can't say definitely they were completely 100% off.
And at the time when you pushed Doug Dietrich, you say he was only 5 or 6 feet away from you?
I said I wasn't sure exactly how far he was.
I think you said 5 or 6 feet, didn't you?
Roughly, I said I wasn't sure. 5 or 6 feet roughly was what I said because I wasn't sure exactly.
But all the rest of the times, he had maintained almost a tactical safe distance from you, right?
I believe so, sir. I don't know what a tactical distance would be.
You described it as he moved when you moved, and he was always keeping himself 10 feet away from you at least.
That's 7 to 10 feet. Yes, sir.
Except at this opportune moment that you took to shove him and get away. Is that right? That was the only time he got to within 5 feet of you?
Like I said before, I wasn't sure if it was exactly 5 feet. I know that I had to lunge and jump at him to get to him. It wasn't where I could just take a step and get to him. And I can roughly step about 4 feet in one step.
When you got back home to your residence that night, you took a shower?
Early morning, yes, sir.
About 4 in the morning on the 21st, you took a shower when you got
I guess
home?
roughly that's what time it was. I'm not for sure.
Because you had Nikki's blood all over you.
White character, yes, sir.
You washed your clothes, correct?
Eventually, yes, sir.
Because your clothes had Nikki's blood on them. Your clothes had Nikki's blood on them at that time?
Yes, sir. I believe that was her blood.
You remember the DNA chart, correct? All the locations on the body where your DNA was found?
I believe so, roughly. I couldn't speculate where everyone was, but I remember roughly, yes, sir.
And you knew from within 48 hours of your arrest that your DNA was found on all those locations on her body.
I personally was known. I don't believe so, but I'm not sure exactly when it was. I don't know exactly where all the points were. I didn't get my discovery until much later.
Just to clarify, your version of the events, you're assaulted, you're held at gunpoint, you carried the mangled body of a woman to her final resting place, and the next day you're going fishing with your buddy with a smile on your face and not a care in the world.
It was a pre-planned event, sir, and I wouldn't say not a care in the world. That would not be something I would say.
No further questions.
Thank you, redirect.
Just one moment, please, Judge.
Whatever you need. Go ahead.